Thanks for joining us on Not Boring CEs, where we don't think you should be bored to death while getting your continuing ed. Keep listening here, then hop over to notboringces.com to get all your online CE credits. All right, y'all, let's get to learning. Kellie Hayes, LPC and LCMHC, has 6 years in the counseling field. She's worked with teens, adults, and children in multiple settings in the course of her career. She's currently working in a group practice based in Texas and is seeing clients part-time in her private practice in both Texas and North Carolina. Kellie focuses on helping her clients believe people aren't mad at them and learn to live and thrive in spite of their past. Kellie utilizes eye movement and desensitization, EMDR, in her practice. Welcome, Kellie. Welcome back to Not Boring CEs. I'm here with Kellie Hayes, and we are talking about Harry Potter and trauma renegotiation. And I love a good allegory. I love metaphors. I feel like, and I also love Harry Potter. So I feel like this is a really great way to conceptualize trauma in a way with clients or for clients that may really help them in a million different ways. So thank you so much for coming on.
Of course.
Excited to talk. So where should we start?
That's a great question. Let's just start at the top.
Okay. I'm thinking about, there may be some people in here listening or watching who have only seen the Harry Potter movies once or something like that.
Okay.
So we want to, you don't have to be a huge devotee. You don't have to have been to Harry Potter World. This is all going to make sense in the context of this one podcast, so you don't have to worry about rereading all the books or something. So let's talk about just some basic trauma stuff, having said all that about Harry Potter. Can we talk about just identifying trauma responses to begin with?
Absolutely. So I guess I'll start with, so if you've only seen the movies, or if you've only read the books, or if you haven't done either one, trauma in Harry Potter is just kind of a theme throughout the entire 7-book series, 8-movie series. So identifying trauma responses, and at least in my eyes, you can be triggered by smells, by sounds, by what you see, by what you hear. All the senses can be trauma responses.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so I'm thinking about social media therapy right now. And how it's if you ever had an ingrown toenail, it's because of trauma, everything's a trauma response on there.
Right.
So how do we differentiate what we might see clinically in our offices and what our clients may be experiencing as a true solid trauma response versus daily living? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so in my eyes, it's a trauma response is something, I think the best way to speak to that is something that feels like it's internal and you feel like you can't control it. And it comes out of nowhere. So for example, if someone's traumatized by someone who is wearing, I don't know, let's just use Old Spice cologne or Old Spice deodorant or whatever, for the rest of your life, or for the 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, when you smell it, it's going to bring you right back to that time that you were traumatized or were seeing something or experiencing something. So for me, that's a trauma response versus, oh, I don't like the way Old Spice smells. It's because my grandpa yelled at me 30 years ago, or I'd stubbed my toe, to use a toe example again. So I guess that's what differentiates between stress and not having a good memory versus a trauma response and avoiding that memory.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it's so personal, which is why these always I always have a bit of an eye roll of people pleasing is a trauma response. Not only sometimes, yeah, but also not always. So
right.
Yeah, not everybody's a people pleaser because they got screamed at and it was awful the one time they tried to have a confrontation with someone. Sometimes it's just it seems easier and you're taking the path of least resistance. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you're people pleasing, if you're Gosh, that's a great point about, if you're people pleasing, a boss or versus people pleasing, I'll use in quotations, your partner. It's not, you don't people please the same way with a boss and a partner. You don't.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not a trauma response always, to your point.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, I think that also brings us to like big T versus little T trauma
Sure.
and how, yeah, let's kind of define those as best we
Mhm.
can,
Okay.
and explore that a little bit.
Okay. So big T trauma, in my opinion, it's a one-time event, or it's a one-time event or multiple events happening, but they're big, like sexual assault or gunshot or school shooting or um a fire, natural disaster. I mean, you name it, like just something that's like, oh my gosh, that must have been so hard for you to get through. How did you get through it? Whenever you hear people ask that question, that's an indication of a big T trauma, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And little T trauma is, for me, those are attachment wounds, and those are really something stemming back to childhood. Again, my opinion, it's one of those things that, it's repeated, it's ongoing, and it's not necessarily abuse, it's not neglect, it's not anything that is on paper easy to understand why you're traumatized. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Absolutely. Which I
Okay.
love. I like that description of it, that on paper, it's not easy to see why you're
Mm-hmm.
traumatized, because it's what so many people with little T trauma experience, is this minimization of their experience when it's very
Yeah.
salient for them. It's very impactful on their lives. And even
Mm-hmm.
like big T versus little T, it sounds like big T is more important, like even just the language versus
Uh-huh.
little T, when like little T can mess up your life just as much.
Uh-huh.
It can be just as hard to heal through
Mm-hmm.
as big T trauma. Yeah.
I love the way you phrase that. And something else that comes to mind that I find myself saying a lot to my clients is that old adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. It's like, I just want to shake the person who came up with that, because I have never heard something as untrue as that.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's, to me, like the sticks and stones, like that's big T trauma. And that's the way I explain it to my clients is, if it's a big T trauma, it's really like sticks and stones, like something you can see like physical with, versus little T, it's those words. It's like, there's so many people who specialize in attachment trauma for a reason, because there's so much of the little T trauma.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's the trauma that most clients also minimize themselves. Like it's minimized by other people as well, but they minimize
Sure.
themselves until
Mm-hmm.
they start to recognize like, oh, this is what's causing this pattern, or this is something I should be over with quotation marks, but I'm not.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the quotation as far as like, well, I should be over it. And again, we all know that we shouldn't should on ourselves, but
hmm
we typically do. We always do, especially if well, you should be over it, or, I don't know why it's such a big deal, if it's coming from people who are important to you, mom, dad, grandparents, family, partner, close friends, siblings. Like, you're going to learn to minimize your own feelings.
hmm Absolutely. So I think about how, coming back to Harry Potter,
Uh huh.
there are tons of different trauma responses amongst the characters.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of big T and little T trauma that we can like follow through with the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Did we hop into some of that?
Let's do it.
Awesome.
So, oh, go ahead.
No, no,
Go.
you go ahead.
So I was just going to say, if you're not familiar with the story, Harry Potter, like at its very basis, it's about a little boy who was given to his aunt and uncle, and because his parents were supposedly killed in a car crash. That's what he was told all growing up by these two people. I'm going to just put a pin in that and just keep my opinions on that to myself. Um, but Harry, even when he was a year old, he experienced one of the biggest T traumas that you could ever experience. Right? It's that he witnessed, and he may not have vivid memories of it, in the first book, but he watched his parents be murdered, right? And then the wizard Voldemort attempted to kill him, and he was the only one in living history in the wizarding world to ever survive that kind of curse, and that no one else has ever done that before. And it's because his mom sacrificed herself basically by throwing herself in front and just saying, no, please don't take me, don't take Harry, just, leave him be.
Mm-hmm.
So big T trauma for sure. And yeah, he just experiences that throughout every single book. And when I was reading these originally when I was a teenager, it's one of those things that I was like, gosh, does he ever get a break? And I remember having that thought, like, does this kid ever get a break? Like, my goodness, he's almost killed, or he's hunted at least throughout every single book.
Mm-hmm.
So that's big T trauma with Harry. We don't know as much about Hermione, but I would say that she's experienced big T trauma. And I'm trying to think of, in the first book, she had to witness Ron be thrown off the wizarding chessboard, and
Mm-hmm.
she had to. I would say this is a big T trauma. It could also be classified as a little T, but she had to use her brain to figure out which potion was not going to hurt her, kill them, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it speaks to, going back to that, those attachment, those perfectionism, and those tendencies to not feel good enough. I feel like that is a potential trauma response for her. We don't know a lot about her history because she's a muggle, right? We don't know what happened in her world. With Ron, I would say that he experiences big T trauma, or maybe even just little T, by being the sixth kid out of seven, I believe, and not feeling good enough, not feeling seen, not feeling like his mom wants him, comparing himself to Harry, not thinking that he's ever going to, find someone for him. And all along, spoiler alert, it's Hermione.
Mm-hmm.
So that, in my opinion, I think he just experiences a lot of little T up until the seventh book. Same thing with Hermione. I think a lot of it is little T trauma up until the sixth and seventh book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When even just thinking about like the wedding scene, is that in the sixth book, fifth or
It's in
sixth?
the seventh.
Seventh. Oh, okay. Yeah. Just thinking about like the wedding scene where everybody is like, it's this moment of joy. Everybody is
Mm-hmm.
like, they're taking a breath finally, and then it's all ruined. And just thinking about that dynamic in our clients of they're afraid the other shoe is going to drop all the time, so they never fully exhale.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when they do, shit happens.
And it's
And
like, well,
how,
God, am I ever going to experience anything good without something really awful happening? What did
yeah,
I do to deserve this kind of treatment, these events that keep happening?
absolutely. And thinking about Jenny,
Mm-hmm.
in second book, yeah.
Yes.
And she's more of a tertiary character until she ends up with Harry essentially. But there's the sense of, in the seventh book, yeah, people they love dying left and right. It's just a lot of trauma, and that's kind of how we end off the kind of 7-book canon, right? Of
Right.
like, everybody's died, but here's the scene at the end where they're grown up and it's all fine. And I find that transition very interesting, of like the resolution feels for so much more for the audience, like for the reader or the viewer to be able to trust that it all worked out in all those years. They processed that trauma fine. They're not still crying over their lost brother, or like that kind of thing. Right.
You're right. I never really thought about that, but even when I was at 18 years old, reading it on my high school graduation night, I was
I
reading
love
it
that.
all. So my mom, and just a quick side note, my mom, God bless her, she went out, and she went out to the midnight release of it, and then I stayed up and I, waited on her. But that was my high school graduation gift, was the Harry Potter seventh book. Like, and it still brings me tears, like when I think about it. I mean, just the fact that my mom, she is not a night owl at all, and she still went out and got that book for me.
I love that.
Yeah, God bless her.
Yeah, I'm gonna just similar vein. Like, I have a Harry Potter teary thing where breastfeeding was very hard for me with both my girls. I would like bleed through bras. It was not a good match initially until they got a little bigger and then it was fine. But with my second, because we'd already had the experience with my first and being so rough, my husband would just like sit up with me while I fed her in the middle of the night and read me fourth book of Harry Potter. So
Oh,
I know it's interesting how like it's sweet how this weaves into our lives in these meaningful ways that really don't have anything to do with the content of the books except
mhm.
our appreciation of them.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And but to go ahead.
There you go.
I was just gonna say, but to your point about the last, I remember reading it during the summer, and then I got to that very last chapter, and I was like, okay, and then I was like, oh, there's a prologue, um, or an epilogue, I guess is the right word. But I was reading it, and I got to the end, I was just like, well, is it okay? Like,
Yeah.
how do we know? Like, where's the proof?
Hmm. Yeah.
So that it's like your point again. It just felt very forced. It felt like you could have ended at the last chapter and then you leave everything to the imagination. And I wonder how that speaks to J.K. Rowling's own trauma history. Like, what was she writing that epilogue for closure for herself to say, hey, everything is okay, everything will work out? Was that for her? Like, who was that for?
Right, right. And just knowing some about her history, like there's plenty
Mm-hmm.
of trauma there.
Yep.
And she's she has earned a controversial reputation. Don't agree with her turfness. Wish that it was not associated with her books in any way, but you know, we can't divorce the author from the books fully, even though I desperately want to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
still love the books, even though I strongly disagree with her. Um,
Yes.
so I'm thinking too about the professors and their big T and little t. They saw so much violence. They
Mm-hmm.
saw, you know, like they were teaching and responsible for a school full of children throughout different phases of absolute threat.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Um,
And it all started with, I mean, not all, but I would say 99.9% of the issues or problems came when Harry was at Hogwarts, for obvious reasons. But I also wonder if, what happens if Severus Snape would have just divorced Harry Potter from James? Like, I wonder how much things would have changed, or I wonder how much things would have been easier for Harry because he would have had a safe adult in his life finally for the first time.
right,
Yeah.
right. Because I mean, he had Dumbledore, but like, I don't know about safe adult and Dumbledore when
Well,
I look at it as a like grown up. I think when I was younger, I saw him as safe.
hmm
Um, uh, and younger being like in my 20s when I read it. But like as a real grown adult at this point, not in my
yeah,
early 20s, and as a parent, I think I'm like Dumbledore.
yeah.
Come on,
Reading
man.
it, rereading these books, I'm just like, what? I'm sorry, what's going on?
Yeah, yeah. So
It's
there's also a good bit of like, you know, some of that could also be coming from Dumbledore's trauma, his own life experiences, his need to hold his cards close to his chest in many ways.
mm-hmm.
Um, I think fair warning for a child is probably a good idea instead of still having him
Mm-hmm.
figure stuff out himself when his
Yeah,
life is in danger.
yeah.
Um,
From the moment he was born.
right? Yeah, absolutely. Um,
you know and I think of Professor McGonagall too. Like, what was her, because we don't know much about her at all.
mhm.
And it's interesting to really, now that I'm thinking about it, it's interesting to see how, or to think about how a lot of the female characters, we don't have a lot of history of, just
Mm.
Ginny.
Mhm.
So, and I wonder if J.K. Rowling meant to do that, or if it was something that she didn't mean to do, or if it's something that just happened. But I just kind of wonder, like, why is there no or little to no history of these female characters?
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting. And I think like they seem on the surface more one-dimensional, right? Like for much of the series, McGonagall feels like just the stern one with
Yeah.
very like a few little moments of like you get this glimpse into her humanity and her
hmm
like she's excited about Quidditch, so she's gonna like snag Harry out of class and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Um, like Mrs. Weasley is just like a sweet mom, like
Mm-hmm.
she's that stereotype.
That's her role. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Um, yeah, there's a good bit of one-dimensionality that happens as well. That I mean, we can't flesh out every single character. I'm not a writer, but it seems like that would be a lot. And the
Right.
books there are plenty of them and they're long enough that we might not
Mm-hmm.
need to dive so deep into each of these characters when the attention is really on the primary characters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm thinking about how, like with clients, it could be a good example of like, we don't know what's going on with McGonagall, right? We don't
Right.
know what's going on with your boss. She is
Mm-hmm.
really stern, and every now and then you see this glimpse of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean she's like your mother. Um,
Right. And how do we change how you respond to your boss because she isn't your mom or he's not your dad, right?
mhm.
She may remind you of them or he may remind you of that childhood, trauma, and it's not them. It's like your system is just trying to keep you safe.
Absolutely. So how do you in session, if you're with somebody who really loves the Harry Potter series,
Mm-hmm.
and knows it well, how do you weave some of this, of what we've talked about, into sessions in a way that has them experiencing their life differently?
That's a great question. I'm thinking back to a client I had, gosh, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I guess it doesn't matter the time frame, but I remember she loved Harry Potter just like I did. She was an avid fan reading the books, and we came up with, and you're familiar with Harry Potter with the Marauders map,
Hmm.
and we kind of had a different take on it. Instead of just like putting random people on there, we actually made it an actual map, and we put out her traumas on there. So we were getting ready for EMDR, and
Hmm.
so we put the time frames on there, and we put all of that. And then she was really artistic as well, so she folded it up, and then whenever it was time for session, she would open it, and then we would come up with. So I would interweave how do you banish, Dementors, and I would do the eye movement, and I would throw in there, what's something that you would like to say, what's a happy memory that you can think of during this time.
Mm.
So that's how that interwove that, and then for EMDR, she used this bag akin to Hermione's expanding bag. And so she
Hmm.
was like, yeah, things are going to stay in there. They're going to be comfortable, and they're going to be big enough because it expands. It's never going to be too much for that. And it was really cool for her to see. Or it was really cool for her to see, and then for me to see like light bulbs go off, like, oh, if I'm having a tough time, I can just put this memory, this feeling, this sensation in here until I'm ready to process it.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that for containment. I never would have thought of like a Marauders map. Um, that's so smart because it is like inherently folded up and put away into a safe spot where it won't get
Mm-hmm.
lost or stolen. Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yeah. And like oh well, and you mentioned Dementors, which
Mm-hmm.
for people who don't remember what Dementors are and how
Uh-huh.
to get them to go away, how to
Mm-hmm.
basically dissolve them. How do you describe that?
So Dementors, however you want to pronounce it. They are soul sucking beings that guard the prison in Harry Potter Wizarding World, which, I don't love the idea of people who or things that are soul sucking guarding other people, but
Mhm.
that's neither here nor there.
Uh-huh.
Um, but they're soul sucking beings, and then all of a sudden they are being asked to guard the Hogwarts in the third book, and that's how they come into play in the third book. That's how we get to know them. They have no feelings other than they feed off the happiness of, or excuse me, off the sadness and despair of other people.
Mhm.
And how you get rid of them is thinking of a happy memory and something so strong that it just takes things away. The way I phrase it to clients who love Harry Potter is a Dementor is a trauma response, right? And then if we use mindfulness to banish it, then it doesn't make the memory go away. It doesn't make it, doesn't make it any less traumatic for you. It just makes it easier to deal with.
Mhm. And I love it for people who read the book or saw the movies. Like they look kind of
Mm-hmm.
like Halloween ghouls a little bit, like
Yeah.
they kind of float around.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the idea of personifying the trauma response to
Mm-hmm.
help make it like less about me freaking out,
Mm-hmm.
and it being a me, like it's all my fault versus
Yeah.
it's like, this is a thing that happens and here's what it looks like. And it is this thing sucking the joy out of your life right now versus it's so common for our folks with trauma to just self-blame so much. And I find that
Mm-hmm.
personifying helps pull it outside of them.
Absolutely.
So I love that idea of Dementors. And I love um, thinking about the way that you banish them is to think of the happy experience, memory, thought. How do you balance that with the clients who would rather just think all the happy thoughts and not process the trauma itself?
That's a great question. So you're asking, and I just want to make sure that I answer your question. So it's how did clients, will you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I'll give an example. Like I am a person who, as a client, will use CBT for evil. Like I will use it to just not feel. Um,
Uh-huh.
so
Okay.
I have to be really careful with a lot, like making space for my feelings. So I can imagine if I was like, okay, this is a trauma response, and if I think about these experiences, I don't experience my trauma response or my trauma really. So I'm only
Mm-hmm.
going to think about these positive experiences and try to bypass the work that gets me
Okay.
through and gets me really renegotiate the trauma, essentially.
Okay. Got it. So that's a great question. I have my own thoughts about CBT, and I think it's great for certain things. For trauma, maybe not so much. And so, whenever a client is wanting to use CBT for trauma and comes in to say, "Hey, I just want to learn how to stop. I want to learn how to do this," I say to them like, "Hey, we can do that. And how has that worked for you in the past?" You
Mhm.
know, and then I explain what EMDR is, and I use the spell, the expecto patronum, as an example. Like, hey, this is what EMDR can do. It doesn't mean that we are going to forget about this memory, because it doesn't define you, and it doesn't have to run your life. You're still going to have power over this memory. Even if this memory pops up, the way that we can think our way and feel our way out of it is by having this one happy, really strong memory.
Mhm.
And it just makes room for you to enjoy the future memories that you'll have with your partner, with your kids, with your family. Much easier to be in the moment and not worried about those dementors popping up again.
Mhm. I like it.
Does that answer
Yeah,
your question?
totally answers
Okay.
our question. I'm just thinking about like the permission giving that happens inherently in that conversation,
Mm-hmm.
Um, that it's not just like, let's think a happy thought. It's like, let's let's make this better by working through it. And
Mm-hmm.
working through it, you won't have to cast this Patronus so often.
Yeah, and the reason I like using Harry Potter interweaves and interventions with EMDR is because inherently, if we're looking at, we have trauma responses as dementors, we have the expecto patronum as the actual like EMDR itself, but then we have the happy memory to summon the Patronus, and the happy memory is part of the preparation stage. I'll just for using that the EMDR language, it's
Hmm.
for the preparation of, we have the secure space. So that's the Hermione example I used earlier with the expanding bag. And then the secure space, that can be what you use or the secure space is a happy memory that's so strong with all five senses that that's what you're using to cast this Patronus. So it's able to protect you from things coming in, but also things going out and how you respond to things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So can I geek out for a second?
Yes, please.
So if we're using those examples, right? So if you are familiar with the books, and even if you're not, so in the third book and in the third movie, Harry and Hermione go back in time for, to rescue Sirius and to rescue Harry from those Dementors and those trauma responses. And the only reason that Harry is able to go back in time is because he watched himself do it before. And so that's what I love using EMDR and Harry Potter interviews, because it's like, oh, here are some concrete examples. You've already done this before. And what worked for you in the past isn't going to work for you in the future. It's not working for you now. Let's look at some different ways. And so Harry had faith in himself to rescue not only himself from getting his soul sucked out by the Dementor, he also helped rescue Sirius.
Mm-hmm.
So just have faith in yourself and knowing that you've done it before and that you can do it again. And that can make all the difference.
Right. And there was a moment there where he didn't realize he was the one who did it. And he
Uh-huh.
kept waiting for someone to save him, basically,
Mm-hmm.
until he
Mm-hmm.
realized he was the only one there to save himself, which I think is
Exactly.
also a powerful message.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah. I'm thinking about the small t traumas
Mm-hmm.
of Harry growing up with his aunt and uncle as well, and how nobody reads that and it's like, nah, not so bad, you know.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
also a space to help people give the gravity to the smaller t traumas by using
Mm-hmm.
him as an example, and some of his experience. Yeah, because there's a lot of small t trauma throughout those books. Um, and like assumed small t trauma before they even begin, right? Like if they're
Mm-hmm.
this awful to Harry now at 11, how awful have they been the past, 10 years? So,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
yeah. Uh,
You know, it's, and now that we're kind of talking about it, like you're right, we don't know what's a small t, all the stuff. Like he was dropped off as a 1.5-year-old or a 1-year-old, right? He was dropped off on his aunt's doorstep, and she already has this really gross feeling about him, and so does her husband. Like, what did he experience as a baby?
mhm,
What did he experience as a 2-year-old, when, because we all know how 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds test patients. So it's, I wonder what like, did he experience a lot of big T trauma during that age and we just don't know about it?
mhm,
It's, what do we know?
mhm. And some of his aunt's small t trauma in
Mm-hmm.
comparison with like her sister and how she like ended up really hating her sister because she never felt special like her sister.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and awful Dudley. Um,
Yeah.
who, yeah, is not written as a very sympathetic character.
No, he's not. Until you get to the last book, and it's not maybe sympathetic, but it's like, yeah, how much of Dudley's environment and how much of Dudley's parents' influence did they have on him for hating his cousin, who was same age? We just, I wonder how much Dudley would have been able to, I don't know, understand and be there and offer compassion for Harry had he known his actual history and
hmm
had not been so spoiled rotten by his parents.
hmm And I feel like there are so many like what our parents teach us analogies here, right? Like somebody coming in and being like, I realize like I'm really prejudiced against this particular group.
Mm-hmm.
This is how my parents were, or just the way they think about certain people in their family based on, I mean, same kind of situation based on what they were taught about them growing up
Mm-hmm.
that they may are renegotiating their experience of. Um, yeah, it's an interesting thing how there are so many things that we all experience within these books that are about things none of us experience. Right? Like
Exactly.
there's no Wizarding World, unfortunately, that we are aware of. Um, and yet like the very human experience
Mm-hmm.
is so relatable in so many different ways.
And I wonder too, with adults reading the books for the first time, I wonder what their experience is like, and I also wonder what characters do they really see themselves in. Like, do they see themselves in Severus and understand Severus's response? And like, there's no excuse for any sort of teacher abusing their power over a child whatsoever. But I wonder who would you know, side with, for lack of a better term, or understand more as an adult versus a kid? Like, who would you villainize in those books as, because it's different for me as an adult than it is for me as a kid.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, like my patience for the kids, had I read it when I was their age, I might be less
Mm-hmm.
patient with some of them, right? Versus
Mm-hmm.
as an adult and seeing how like little experience with anything children have. There's much more, I'm much more generous with them than I might have been if it had come out when I was younger.
Yeah. So the first book came out when I was in fifth grade, so 11, so right at that age.
Perfect.
So the first book came out, and I found myself being so annoyed with Hermione throughout the entire book. It did not matter whatsoever that she saved their lives and that she helped out in so many different ways. And it's just, as an adult or even as a teenager, when I reread the first book, I was like, Hermione, like I am so sorry that I was kind of mean to you in the first book. She's just wanting to prove herself. She just wants to, there's obviously a lot of perfectionism there. And also, she just wants to be connected and loved. And I wonder how many of our clients feel a lack of connection and feel a lack of love from family of origin, but also like, how much do they have to prove themselves to other people to be good enough? Like,
Right.
she had to earn her spot at Hogwarts. She's already got it.
And I'm wondering, not to therapize, but I'm wondering if like that annoyed you so much at that age because that was a part of yourself you really didn't like.
Oh, 1,000%. I am my ideal client.
Right, right. Yeah. Because I think about like the internet had something a while ago that was kind of like, what three characters from books, TV, or movies are you most like? And Hermione was one of mine. And I'm like, I don't think I have the like know-it-all quality that she has that can make her annoying, but that striving to do everything the right way and the best, I can totally over relate to. And mix in a little Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec, and it starts to become very much like me. But seeing it as an adult who can acknowledge my flaws and acknowledge my strengths in a way I couldn't say as a kid. Like even just this morning, I was talking to my 7-year-old and she's like, I don't want any feedback. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Like feedback is how we get better and we want to get better at this thing. Are you sure it's like it's worth it to not ask this person for feedback? She's like, it makes me feel bad about myself. Like I'm not good enough. And I was like, oh, babe,
Oh,
like,
no.
oh, so just
I'm
thinking
just
about
gonna
like,
take that out.
I know. There's no taking it out, unfortunately.
No.
And there's also no getting where she wants to go without feedback. So it's this,
That's right.
we'll sort it out. But just thinking about reading it as a child and being annoyed by certain characters. Like I was also as a young adult annoyed by Ron. And how I could see now looking back, like there's that part of me that's afraid of being too much and annoying. And like I found him to be too much and annoying sometimes, and how like it just revealed some things about me that I can, take and run with. So yeah.
So, and as a kiddo, not as a kiddo, but as a 14, 15, 16-year-old reading the fifth one where Harry's like, he starts to show some real PTSD symptoms. And I know that now as a therapist, as someone who has clinical knowledge of it, but at 14, 15, I'm just like, why are you yelling? I don't understand why you're yelling at these people who love you, who accept you. And it's like goes back to like me not feeling accepted and good enough and wanted by my friends. It's like, don't push them away.
Right.
So, but then to that point, he's experiencing so many trauma responses during that fifth book, right? He's having to fight off Snape with the occlumency. and he's reliving those, watching Cedric Diggory killed. Like he's experienced so much trauma already by 15. He's having those responses, and it even describes in the book like he feels like he can't control himself, and he feels like he can't control the yelling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I loved Hermione for standing up to him in that book and just saying, there's no need to talk to me like that. There's no need for you to yell at me. There's no need for you to treat us this way. We're on your side. And to, relate it back to clients, it just makes sense. Like, it's so good for people to say, hey, it's not okay for you to talk to me like that. Yes, I know you're hurting. Yes, I know that you're experiencing maybe this trauma response. And that's not okay that you're treating me the way that you're treating me now.
Yeah. So important for people who have loved ones who are
Mm-hmm.
working through trauma, and also so important for the people with trauma to see like this is one way love can look. You know,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
can be calling you out on this behavior because they love you and this is not how they deserve to be treated.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
it's that, as long as, they're offering support, Ron and Hermione are there with Harry literally the entire way, except for that brief little stint in the seventh book. But it's what I love about Hermione's character is that she sticks with Harry no matter what. Like, so it, for me, an adult reading these books, like Hermione's values, right? Friendship, loyalty, and integrity. She's someone of her word, and she does not back out, as you were talking about in your newsletter.
Uh-huh.
But she's not someone who backs out at all. She said, I'm giving you my word. We said that we would do this with you. Doesn't matter how hard it gets, I'm with you. And I think that their friendship is one of the best things that I've ever read about.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, and I think about how having examples in media of what
Mm-hmm.
healthy friendship looks like, that it's not always easy. Like even Ron leaving and coming back, like that there
Mm-hmm.
can be breaks and they're not
Absolutely.
forever. And yeah, that having those like ride or dies, basically, the people that really will stick with you, really will,
Mm-hmm.
even when it gets really messy, and that you will stick with them. And that you'll talk about it instead of just shoving down the resentment of
Yeah.
having chosen to ride.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a great point. And I also think that it's great. Ron left because he couldn't take it. I'll take that back. It's not that he couldn't take it. It's just that it got really hard, and he had expectations of Harry that were not met. So that's what he's angry about. The expectations were not met. But
Mm-hmm.
for Ron to come back says so much about his trust and his love of Hermione and Harry, right? So it's like, okay, well, I'm willing to be vulnerable if you guys will have me back. Like, they could have said no. They could have, said no, we're doing fine without you. And even if they didn't welcome him back, I wonder what Ron would have done.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to think about that because they welcomed him back.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A lot of like grace for one another,
Mm-hmm.
around like not being your best.
Mm-hmm. And just saying,
And
show up how you want to. Show up. We will be here for each other. And I think that it's not really shown in the movies, but in the books, there's so many examples of so many ruptures, but also so many repairs.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and how helpful that is, especially for our perfectionistic clients
Oh
who
yeah.
feel like in order to earn the love of their friends, they have to do it right all the time, which keeps them
Mm-hmm.
people pleasing because then they're not gonna bring up the thing that hurts,
Mm-hmm.
because then it risks ruining everything. So,
Exactly.
and that just building resentment and sometimes self-reproach. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, it's so good to have examples of this because
Yeah.
we don't see it. Like people don't
No.
see this happening in the friendships outside of their own. They may hear the drama of it. I'm thinking particularly of like teenagers and young adults. They may hear the drama of like so and so and so and so aren't friends anymore. And then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden they're friends again. But they don't see how that happened.
Yeah.
And to have books or movies or just media of any kind,
Mm-hmm.
giving examples of a healthy way to do that. And sometimes an unhealthy way to do it and the repair that follows. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really important.
And to your point, I wonder, there's not, well, so if we talk about Percy, right, we know that Percy is like that perfectionist, that he's always wanting to do something, always achieve the next goal, always wanting to achieve the like level of power. And then whenever he leaves the house and everything, he's always welcomed back by his mom. He's always welcomed back by, you know, maybe siblings give him a hard time, but they respect their mom enough to say, hey, and they love their mom enough to say, hey, yeah, I guess come back. We're going to give you a hard time. And it makes mom happy.
Right, right. And like, even though you made this choice to work for the Ministry of Magic, like, even though you made this choice that is against our values at this time, we love you. And you have a place here with us. And we hope you change your mind.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of that going on in the world right now, I don't think.
No.
Of like our values clash. And so, but I'm still going to accept you. Yeah. Yeah. Are there ways in which bringing Harry Potter into session has surprised you?
Think about that for a second. You know, actually, yes. So I'm thinking back when I lived in North Carolina, there was someone who I did not know was a Harry Potter fan. And then I knew that they were a voracious reader, and then they mentioned Harry Potter, and I was like, okay, awesome. And I was like mentally like, all right, let's go. But it's, you know, she did not go where I thought she would. She said that we were doing the secure space, and we were doing like all of that work for the EMDR. But she said, you know, I can't even imagine, you know, reading these books now as comfort, because that's what she used to do, like me. But she said, I can't even imagine reading these books and thinking of these characters and, you know, knowing how much trauma they experience and knowing how much like that I enjoyed reading them and I just kind of glossed over it, makes me feel bad for them, and that makes me feel guilty and etc. And I was like, oh, well, so that surprised the heck out of me. She said, I can't even read these books anymore because of all of the abuse that goes on, because of all the neglect that goes on with kids. Like, I can't read this. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna like backtrack on some of my Harry Potter references, but we're gonna go with it. But it's so funny because when I asked her like who does she relate to the most, she said Hermione, and she said that Hermione experienced trauma in her own way, but you know after we did the touchstone memory and not feeling good enough and all of that stuff, she said that she was able to get back into the books and see it with a different light of like, hey, these kids, yes, they've experienced trauma, yes, they've done they've been through horrific things, and they still have each other. They still have that connection. And so that, from her going from not being able to read them as an adult to rereading them with this new lens, that it made me cry whenever we discharged and she graduated.
Yeah, I mean, it's working through trauma and getting to that space of like the resiliency, right?
Exactly.
It's such a perfect example of that, like an external example of that.
And and at the very end of it and all of that, it was just, I'm familiar with the term post-traumatic growth, but it's whenever we had worked through everything and worked through as much as we could, rather, she just surprised the heck out of me with all of the growth that she did experience, right? I'll go to the rooftop screaming about EMDR, diminishing, banishing Dementors, having these skills, having these tools, because I'm not someone you come to see for like just coping skills, just strategies. We're gonna start from the very, very bottom and work our way up. So that's how you experience post-traumatic growth, in my opinion.
Yeah. Has there been anything that had you see the series differently that a client has said? Or a character?
Yeah, I'm thinking. I don't know. I think just some of the clients that I've seen who were maybe maybe not differently, just in a maybe in a different understanding. I had a teenage client who is a teenager now, so they read the entire series and read the entire series, not having to wait, which is great, but they just went through it. But they said something about, gosh, they said something about Dumbledore, and they said that from the first book they didn't trust him. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I asked him why, and it completely related to like, okay, well, they don't trust authority figures because the authority figures didn't protect them from, this abuse that they were experiencing at home. They told people, and nobody came for him. Nobody helped him. So it's like, oh, interesting. You were the first person ever who did not trust Dumbledore.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it just it gave me pause. I was like, oh, I know that when I was a little girl reading them, I was like, yeah, Dumbledore is great. He's gonna rescue him. He's gonna do all these, awesome things. And then by the third book, as a 13-year-old and being cynical and all that stuff, I was like, he's gonna be a bad guy in the end. He wasn't a bad guy. You just, man, there's a whole side of him that we only got to see way later.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's interesting how especially kids with trauma pick up on things that adults don't.
yep.
Yeah.
And I wonder how she knew, like how did you know that from the get-go? Like, and she never said like why she didn't trust him, or she didn't say like what was giving her these feelings and everything, aside from these people not rescuing, Harry, and rescuing all these things. Like, yeah, she said, how can an adult, knowing how this kid is going to be treated or suspected they're going to be treated, how do you drop this baby off knowing 11 years is going to go by so slow, and he has no other knowledge other than green flashes and feeling on edge, like, and I never thought about it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about those moments when power kind of erupted from him, like blowing up his other aunt into a balloon, or like that kind of thing, and how that also is a trauma response, right? Like there are ways in which we end up reacting that like we didn't mean to, but like not totally sorry it happened. And also it can get us into trouble, and how that kind of, or relating it to impulsivity for folks with ADHD. Like there are so many different ways to use that information also, that like you don't blame Harry for it. You're kind of glad, but you also know, oops, like there's going to be a consequence for that none of us want for him. Right.
And I wonder, and I read this somewhere, and it made me think, to your point, he's, spoiler alert, he's obviously the seventh Horcrux, right? There's a part of Voldemort living in him. So I wonder if that's why people treated him poorly, and that's what I was reading. It's like, he's got this part he's part of Voldemort. Like without him dying, Voldemort can't die. So I wonder like how much of the responses that his aunt, his uncle, Snape, and obviously Snape is different, but I wonder if, like, how much of him, like that Horcrux living within him, I wonder how much that impacts, how people treat him. Because it's not fun, right? Because if we remember from the seventh book, even wearing that necklace impacted Ron, impacted Hermione, didn't really necessarily impact him because he's felt that way his entire life.
Right. Yeah. Is there any like particular character that feels like it comes up more in therapy than just the common conversations around Harry Potter? Like, are there people that stick out to your clients when they're processing?
You know, I mean, just the usual. I've had people use McGonagall as a safe figure.
Mhm.
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, no, other than just like the normal, like Harry, Hermione, Ron, McGonagall. I've had Ginny come up quite a bit.
Mhm.
So, and that's surprising if you've only seen the movies, but if you've read the book, like, yeah, I want Ginny on my team.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it's Ginny comes up, which is great, but she's someone who I'm surprised that clients continue to bring up. Um, if they've only read the books, it's still surprising to me because she's not like a main character.
Mhm.
But when she's in the book, she gives a pretty clear definition of like what a strong, confident young lady and woman looks like.
Mhm. Absolutely. What I'm wondering too about like relating to somebody who is not a main character also feels safer in a lot of ways because the main characters have even more responsibility, even though
Mm-hmm.
like Jenny kicks all sorts of ass, like
Mm-hmm.
there's an amount of responsibility and pressure that is inherent with being a main character in anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how that's maybe not something clients want to take on right now, like while they're
Yeah.
also
Okay.
working on themselves. Um,
They don't want that main character energy.
yes, yeah.
Got it.
Right now I'm just working on me.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, is there anything that has changed the way you view the books as a whole that your clients have brought to you or said and just sparked something in your head?
You know, I don't I don't think so. Just because I've got a and that this may not be I don't know, this may not be the best way to put this, but I use the series to get through a really, really tough time in my early 20s and in a relationship and all of that. I was just in a dark place, and so I have a pretty like characters. My opinions have changed for sure,
Mhm.
but the series as a whole, I'm just like it brings me such a sense of relief and comfort, and of course it's escapism and all of that. But yeah, my opinion of the series hasn't changed. Like characters, like I said, sure. Series as a whole, not really.
Mhm. Got it. Yeah, I love when like we have a comfort book series or show or something like that
Mm-hmm.
that our clients share. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for me to not just like get into like oh da, 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 da with about it because it's not it's not therapeutic necessarily. But to be able to pull on that clinically, I think is such a good way to connect, especially like when you're both very into it and you can have conversations with one another that like the average like person who saw the movies maybe a few years
Yeah.
ago might not be able to have. Um, yeah, it's interesting how it can be a point to bolster rapport as well as a way to get pretty deep clinically on some things.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it's what you were saying about the seeing the movies versus reading the books. I like to if someone has just seen the movies, they're not going to maybe get certain references. And so that's whenever they do read the books, yeah, it's one of those things that's a way to again go back to not judge a book by its color, right? Like your boss may be reminding you of someone. Is that his or her fault? And if it's not his or her fault, if they're not treating you poorly, like, is it because you're responding to something that you've experienced from your past? And if they are yelling, if they are, treating you poorly, like, what's going on with them? What's going on in their life? What have they experienced to make them act that way to treat a subordinate or an employee
Hmm.
not well? Not saying that you have to tolerate it by any means. And are you able to practice a little grace for yourself and for them?
Hmm. Absolutely. I think about like other series. I had a client tell me it was I think all of the Hunger Games books were out, but I think the second movie had just come out.
Okay.
And they said, like, I feel like I'm in the Hunger Games every day,
Mhm.
like really
Oof.
significant trauma, right? And just them saying that to me helped me feel and know how like all encompassing it was at a level that I
Yeah.
hadn't before. Like I didn't realize how bad it was all day, you know? So
Yeah.
it was really, really helpful for me as a clinician to hear that, to be able to allow the gravity in the room, basically.
Hmm.
Um, I think about like my daughter's reading all the Percy Jackson books right now,
Okay.
and which I love because it's like my kids are really into mythology. And so it's like, here's a book series based loosely on some of the things in mythology, plus a modern character.
Hmm.
And just seeing how like Percy has ADHD and dyslexia, much like other kids who, spoiler alert, are demigods. And it just putting a spin on these diagnoses my daughter has, that
Hmm.
like, it's like, yeah, because you're special. That's why you have it. Just really, I
Oh.
love her having this example.
Hmm.
And she will talk to me about the deeper parts about the book and the feelings that characters are having. And she'll also be like, oh, they kissed, that too. But there's like an interesting way that she seems to be processing as she's reading these books.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so yeah, they're just, I think like bibliotherapy is on the rise, which I love. And I just
Yes.
think there are some real opportunities for empathy for ourselves and others through characters,
Absolutely.
and ways to look at trauma that gives trauma the respect, for lack of a better word, that it deserves in the role
Hmm.
that it's played in our lives. When we can do it easily for a character, it helps us do
Hmm.
it easier for ourselves as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just because this happened, like, how did your behavior and how did those responses in the past, how did they help you, right? We're not going to get into parts work or anything, but it's one of those things that, again, it no longer serves you. It helped you survive. It helped, like, that compartmentalization, that dissociation, like all of those things. Man, oh man, they helped get you out of an awful situation, much like Harry helped him survive.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we look at it like, okay, well, shutting down, not saying anything back, like that's not really helpful for you now. And, always thinking people are mad at you and making yourself small, that's not helpful for you right now anymore. In the past, 100,000%. How do we change how you respond to that trigger now?
Mm-hmm. I love it. Thank you so much for talking with us about this. I feel like
Yeah.
it's such an interesting way to think about trauma and to help relate some things to clients that might not relate as easily in other ways, because it's just so
Mhm.
clinical. So yeah, I really
You're
appreciate it,
welcome.
Kellie.
Yeah, you're welcome. This was awesome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I hope that broadened your clinical horizons. Head over to notboringces.com to get your CE credit. Want to have a not boring conversation with me about your clinical area of expertise? You can apply there too. If you like this conversation, leave us a 5-star review, tell a friend, and be sure to subscribe for future conversations.